What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another draft profile video, sort of today. Today, we're taking a look at one of the top pass rushers in the NFL draft. This is Kayvon Thibodeaux out of Oregon. So let's get it started.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here. We're back with another draft video. Now, I don't know if this is like exactly like our normal draft profile videos, but we are going to be spotlighting one player in today's video, and that is that pass rusher out of Oregon, whose name's been in the media a ton recently for many different reasons, but it's been out there a ton. Recently, I've been going through rewatching a lot of the prospects that I already had notes on. I'm getting ready for my kind of initial release of my draft guide. It's going to be on the website, doseofdion.com. That's going to be coming within a day or two. I'm going to be posting that, and that's going to continue to get updated up to the draft. So I'll put like late round players in there. That'll just continue to be updated. However, the base information, the base players that I wanted to get in there, I wanted to rewatch these guys. Yesterday, I spent pretty much all day rewatching the quarterbacks, and I feel like I have a really nice feeling about 7, 8 of these guys in this draft, where I'm confidently can say I think this of the player. And today, I was going back through the edge rusher position. And of course, you get to that guy, Kayvon, and you see everything that's been out there in the media. Sure, there's been questions about his effort. There's been things that he has said, which kind of like, whoa, this saying, you know, Myles Garrett 2.0, that takes everybody back. They're like, why would you say Myles Garrett 2.0? You know, and then there's been rumors that he's falling in this year's draft. You know, odds are dropping. Actually, see the odds rise that he would be the Lions 2 pick since we went to his pro day. Apparently, we sent 7 staff members there. Again, I'm not making a big deal out of that. I know Brad Holmes was there, but he also didn't do anything at the combine. So it's like, if you want to see him, you got to go to the dude's pro day. And you always send guys to pro days, especially a potential top pick in the draft. I mean, you got to send everybody. You got to know everything about this guy's background. Now, for us, from the outside looking in, I'm really not going to touch on his background because I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go on a website and say, well, here they said, you know, he's a hard worker. Like, I don't know. That's something the Lions have to figure out. That's talking to people around him. That's talking to people that like him, that don't dislike him. I don't get to talk to those people. So I'm not going to make, you know, any kind of claims about that. It was sort of similar to when Micah was coming out. Not really. Micah had like trouble concerns. This is more on the field with Kayvon, but I didn't know anything about it. Like, I can't go into his background because I don't know. All I can tell you is what I see from watching his games. And that's what I wanted to do in this video with Kayvon. I mean, I've seen some quotes out there, you know, the coach saying, well, he's a really hard worker, he missed a play against the run and the pass. But again, I just want to focus on what I saw on the field because I definitely think differently about certain things in his game as I continue to learn about this positional group. And there's some things that I really just want to share with you guys because he could end up being the Lions' top pick in this year's draft. Who knows? I do think this is the position that the Lions will ultimately end up going with their top pick. So I want to have a really good feel on all of these guys that could potentially be that pick. So today, I thought we'd take a little bit of a deeper dive into who Kayvon Thibodeaux is because we really haven't put a video like this on this channel. So let's do that. So who is Kayvon Thibodeaux? If you don't know, he is the edge defender out of Oregon. He weighed in at 6'4", 256 pounds at his pro day, but most of the stuff that he did was at his pro day. The only thing I think he did at his combine that he measured out in was bench press in the 40 time. I believe the bench press was also at the combine. He ran a 4.58 40, which is really good for an edge rusher. I mean, the 40 time really doesn't matter too much, but it does kind of tell you the athlete that he is. He had a really nice 10-yard split. It was like 1.59 if I'm remembering correctly. I should have just checked my notes. And 27 bench press reps, which is really nice for that position. 33 and 1/8 inch arms, which isn't bad. Not a liability. It's not outstanding like a Trayvon Walker at 35 inches, but it's not bad either. It definitely keeps the door open for a lot of things that he can bring to the table. Just a really well-rounded athlete. He didn't do his vertical jump. He had a 7.233 cone drill, which is not great. I mean, not a ton of people actually did their cone drill from this positional group at the combine, but he would have been down in kind of like the Logan Hall area with that time. It's not a great 3 cone drill, and I think from the 3 cone drill, maybe some of the lower body agility, some of the quickness there, and it's not a great time, but it's actually not too crazy considering what I think about what I see from him on his film. Now, statistically, this past season, he had a good year. He played in 10 games where he had 28 hurries, 9 sacks, and 11 quarterback hits. Now, that's according to PFF. I think Pro Football Reference gives him like 7.5 sacks, so it's a little bit different. And he had a 23.2% pass rush win rate, which is really good. I mean, it's up there with the top guys in this class, that percentage is. Now, this season, he did miss some time. Going back to the beginning of the year, he had an injury against Fresno State. It was an ankle injury. I think it was a sprained ankle, and he missed the next couple of games, Ohio State, Stony Brook. He kind of worked worked his way back into the Arizona game a little bit. We didn't see him very much. Then in that game, after a few plays of playing, he kind of re-injured it before half, and we didn't see him, I believe, in the second half. And then the next week, he started to mix in early, and then he was pretty much full go against, I think it was Stanford the next week. So he got back and he was fine. The year before, they played 7 games. It was the COVID year. He had 42 total tackles and 9.5 tackles for loss. And in his freshman season, he came out as one of the top, recruits in the country. I think he was like 49th all time at his position coming out of high school, where he had 35 total tackles and 14 tackles for loss. This past season was 49 total tackles and 12 tackles for loss. They're pretty darn solid, but we know that doesn't tell the whole story. Are they giving attention? Are you that guy that goes under the radar defensively? Are you the second option that a team, throws help at? Or are you the guy that gets all of the attention defensively? Are you the guy that gets double teamed? Are you the guy that gets chipped? Are you the guy with tight end sliding to your side? How do they play you offensively? Also, what plays do they run against you? I mean, is it running at you? Is it running away from you? Is it quick passing? Like, what kind of impact do you really have on the game? And Kayvon has a pretty massive impact on the field, and you can tell that teams definitely are aware of where he is all the time. Maybe not to like the David Ojabo level, but he definitely does have some good help from him on the defensive line. One of his teammates, when he did miss time, they stepped in pretty well from him. I believe his teammate's name is Funa. I think that's what it is. I think he's coming out in next year's draft. He's a pretty highly recruited outside linebacker, really nice run defender. So he had some nice help with him along the defensive line. Maybe not to like the David Ojabo, Aiden Hutchinson level, but he had some nice help along the defensive line. With Kayvon, I think I've seen every game that he's played in this past season. I even pulled up a little bit of 2020 as well. And one thing I will say throughout the season is I definitely felt like he got better as the season went on. Like the UCLA game, he had some nice stat line. He had like 4.5 tackles for loss in that game, but it definitely didn't feel like he was at his best in that game. We'll actually show some clips from that. However, as the season continued to go on, really up to like the Oregon State game, the Utah game was not very good. They just got pounded. But the Oregon State game specifically, that game, I thought he just went insane. He went crazy in the Oregon State game, and it might be the best single game that I've seen from any edge defender in this class. I mean, George has had some great games as well. Aiden Hutchinson has had some nasty games, including the game against Ohio State where he had like 3 sacks. But this game against Oregon State was outstanding. And as the game went on, it was just like, wow, he is getting after it. And it continued for 4 quarters. You got into the 4th quarter where Oregon State was in a pass-only situation. They were in pass-only mode. And the guy went nuts. It was like every play he was in the backfield. So I first want to kind of talk about his run defense a little bit, because this is an area where I feel like it's not at his best right now. I think he definitely has a lot of traits that can make him a much better run defender than he is right now. It seems like more of the technical side needs to be improved here, kind of what he's seeing as a run defender. But he does bring, for the most part, the traits that you need to definitely improve as a run defender. And still, you saw Oregon use him in a lot of different ways, sometimes as the guy that would be making the play in the backfield, and other times just you kind of saw the role that they put him in, which I think would best suit him in the NFL. And that role would probably be playing like a backside run defender. I love him on the backside, and you hear commentators say it all the time when you watch Oregon games, is the best way to really attack him is to run at him, not away from him. When you run away from him, that's where Kayvon gets really scary, especially if he's out there on the edge, if he's outside of a tackle, he's working into the backfield, because as soon as that's the case with Kayvon, he just runs plays down. He's great against, cut blockers that may work away across the line of scrimmage to try to hold him off. He just runs through those guys, but he does a nice job really flattening the line of scrimmage behind it and just closing ball carriers from behind, just running guys down from behind. I think that area will suit him best at the next level, which means that I don't think he's the best run defender. Now, clearly he's not 275 like a Trayvon Walker or 280, but I also do believe, even at this size, that he could be a much better run defender than he is. We know he's very strong, especially in the upper body, but I think technically there's just some things that could be cleaned up here with really good coaching and more experience, and all of a sudden I think his run defense could be much better than it is now. Oregon used him in a couple different ways. You would see them slide him inside, sometimes on very short yardage situations like a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. They may slide him over a guard. They may slide him inside the center of guard. Push him inside, and this is an area where you can be very beneficial, is shooting gaps. Because of that quick get off, you can really stay low, split gaps. That's one way that Oregon will use him on short down situations, like a quarterback sneak situation, or even if he is on the edge, again, shooting the gaps, especially from the backside. Say there's a tight end on the side, just kind of splitting those guys and working into the backfield. He made this crazy play against Oregon State where he just flew off the line, split the tight end, and he was into the backfield and made the play. I was like, oh my goodness, that's incredible. As a run defender, and I guess this kind of goes as a whole defender as well, is that he can do a really nice job of identifying draw plays and even screens. I know that's a pass play, but he can do a pretty nice job of identifying that from the edge and and kind of work himself back into the play rather than putting himself out of the play. You know, when you're running like a screen or you're running, you know, a draw upfield, then a lot of times these edge guys, they can kind of be like brought into the backfield on purpose and then they're taken out of the play. That's how offenses utilize those to really slow down the pass rush. Kayvon can kind of recognize those. I saw it twice. I saw one against the screen where, because of how the blocker was playing him, he rushed me initially and then he kind of backed off and was like, hold up, let me find this running back here. And then the second one I saw against a draw where he noticed how the offensive tackle was again blocking. He backed himself up and got to the middle of the field. He actually did that a few times where he took himself from the edge position, which was going to be washed out of the play if he ran into the backfield, and put himself in the middle of the field. You know, those are kind of the heads up plays that you see here and there from him. I wrote down that he's not a sack chaser, and I don't mean that in a bad way for this certain instance. I mean, you usually hear that the pass rusher, like a guy that's not a sack chaser, that's probably an issue. Yeah, that would be an issue. However, he is a team player. This is what stuck out to me. And I've seen this a few times, you know, after seeing this and really thinking about what he was doing here. And then I've thought back and I'm like, well, I've actually seen this a few times from the guy. He doesn't really always chase his own production. Now, sure, at the end of a game, if you're going to keep throwing and they're going to leave him in, and sometimes they didn't. They had some blowouts, I think, versus Colorado. They took him out early. But some games, if you leave him in, you're up big. He's going to keep rushing the passer and try to get his stats. I would too. That's the fun part. I mean, a pass rusher knows you're passing the ball. That's got to be like, I mean, this is what we live for, right? To get after the quarterback. But there's this play that sticks out to me where you're in the red zone. I think you're inside the 5 offensively here. And you're going to see that he's not even going to be blocked off the edge. You're looking for this quick pass. They're not even going to block him off the edge. He's got a free rush towards the quarterback. But what's huge about this play is instead of him just deciding I'm going to take off and run directly at the quarterback on this play because I have a free rush, instead, you'll see the quarterback look his direction, get ready to throw the football, and he stops himself, puts his arms up, jumps in the air, forces the quarterback to pull the ball back down, come back to his second read, because once he pulls it down, Kayvon's back towards the quarterback, closes his face, then he has to throw it elsewhere, pass is not open, it's broke up, and it's incomplete. That's one of those instances where you're unblocked, it's like, hey, just let me go get the quarterback, not even worry about anything else. But instead, he makes the team play, and instead of worrying about that, he understands what's going on, and he stops himself, gets in the passing lane, and takes away the pass. One of those things that I feel like can be very overlooked, but to me, that does say a lot about the type of player that you can get here in terms of a team player on the field. That was huge. That play stuck out to me big time. But as a run defender, so what do I mean that he could improve? Well, I think he clearly has the strength to be a good run defender. And what you see is, I think sometimes he gets sort of like tunnel vision on his blocker, on the guy directly across from him. He gets tunnel vision on tight ends, on offensive tackles, where instead of always setting the edge extremely well, being aware of where the play is actually going, sometimes he'll get stuck just kind of pushing his guy and working his guy back into the box. I think he could improve here. And specifically, where I think he can improve here is really with the way that he attacks, especially reaching linemen. You get a reaching offensive tackle, you get a reaching, tight end, someone that's trying to put a reach block on him, like a zone block or something like that. Here's an area where I think he can improve. You want your lead foot, your outside foot to be on a string with your hand. This is an area where I think he could improve, because for Kayvon, who has solid length, it's definitely, it's something that you can work with. It's not incredible. It's not 35-inch arms. It's all about creating that space and that distance between you and that offensive lineman or that tight end so that you can get off the block. It's not about always driving them into the backfield, right? Because sometimes you're taking yourself out of the play. That way you can disengage if it's to the outside or to the inside and make a play on the run. This is an area where I feel like he can improve. Really that kind of first step into whoever, let's say, that reaching blocker is. It's that first step that can improve. You'll see him extend his arms, which is nice, and you also see him be the guy that usually attacks first, which is necessary. I mean, you have to be the guy that makes the initial contact as that edge defender in that situation. Foot that's kind of on the string with his hand, that foot can leg behind, and it takes him a couple steps to get into it. This is extensions, but his whole body isn't necessarily there in that position, so it takes him a step or two to get closer. Now he's closing that distance between him and whoever the blocker is, and as soon as you get that tight with the blocker, you're in a really bad spot, and then you see the inability to disengage. This is where he has issues. I think George could improve here as well, but then you see the issues then to disengage because he's so tight with this offensive lineman. Now they're in a position that they want to be, and he's not. It makes it much tougher for him to disengage, get off the block, and make the play. And I think you see kind of a similar thing as an edge defender as well, trying to set the edge. He gets too engaged on the blocker, and you'll see it in a lot of different ways. He'll get too engaged on a pulling offensive lineman, where he's just focused on that guy, doesn't always see the entire play, and he just kind of takes himself out of the play. He just initiates, he's looking for the contact. It's almost like he's always trying to drive his guy into the backfield, which is nice, but at the same time, it's not, because you're not putting yourself in a position always to actually make the play against the run. And that's an area that can be improved to me. I mean, it feels like one of those things that can get better, right? Because he has the strength, he has the length, and if he's not tired, he can definitely stay low and get that at distance, and even kind of in the base blocking stats, I still think that he could be a little bit better, you know, sometimes at consistently shooting his hands first, consistently initiating the contact. You will occasionally see some of those disengagement issues where he can get kind of too close and too locked up with a tight end or an offensive lineman, where the disengagement isn't always there, so a run can kind of go right by him, right by his lane. But you obviously see good enough length. You definitely see the punching power, especially in the upper body, to jolt guys backwards. I think for him, it's the vision, seeing the entire play consistently. I think really the best spot for him is playing, you know, the side of the running back, being able to play the backside run where he can run plays down, which makes you hesitate a little bit if you really want like a dominant run defender. It's a little bit hesitant when you're looking for maybe like a dominant edge run defender, because I don't think he's there yet. But with the tools that he has, you know, he has definitely good enough length, definitely enough power, setting the edge on a read option. And I felt like he did improve in some of these areas as the season went on, being disciplined to make sure that he really held the edge and didn't just dive on the running back or the quarterback. There were some instances, you know, this past year where you would see him, you know, kind of sell it on the quarterback or sell it on the running back on the play and leave the entire lane wide open to the edge. Guys would get outside of him. That kind of thing you did see happen. And that's where, when I think people say, well, he's got effort questions, he's got this and that, I never really seen issues in terms of effort as a pass rusher. I don't think I've ever seen that. Yeah, lack of counter rush move can stall out, but that's something that can be improved. And a lot of pass rushers coming out of the draft, they need that improvement. Most guys coming out of the draft for pass rushers don't exactly super polished. A lot of guys have room where they can improve in terms of pass rushers, but it's just about that elite athlete that you are getting in the building. Specifically as a run defender, I did take a couple of notes from the UCLA game when he would make the wrong decision on a run and he would be 20, 25 yards out of the play, but then he wouldn't necessarily run back into the play, you know, just some frustration. However, I didn't really notice that as much later on in the season. Times this past year where I noticed some clearly visible frustration, it felt like in that UCLA game. And that's not great because you don't want a pass rusher run hot and cold. But a few times where he seemed frustrated, that UCLA game, there was also the Utah game. He gave up one touchdown there and you could tell there was visible frustration. It's not that he gave up on the play, but he was frustrated that they gave up the touchdown that was ran to his side. And there was a couple of those. Another red zone touchdown that as soon as he came in, they ran his side, a play action rollout, and he was kind of in between the tight end or the quarterback. They ended up dumping it off right to the tight end. They scored the first play that he got into the game. I think for him, a lot of it is about finding that rhythm. He can run a little hot and cold, which you don't love. When he found the rhythm, boy, he got rolling. He was kind of in a weird spot early in the season, especially when he came back off his injury, kind of the rotation in and out. It didn't seem consistent. But once he gets rolling, man, he can absolutely get going. And plus, you know, in the NFL, you'll be able to rotate him in and out if need be. But I think you want to just let him go loose. Let him get downhill. Let him play fast. Let him play like his hair is on fire and you're getting the best Kayvon Thibodeaux you could get. But we do talk about Kayvon moving inside. Mostly on pass downs, you see that. But at the same time, like you said, those short yardage situations, sometimes they would slide him inside. However, he's not going to move inside on early downs. You're not going to ask him to two gap. He's not that style. He's not built for that. When you watch Kayvon, he is the type of player that you want going downhill. You want getting downhill. You want that guy shooting gaps. So if you are going to slide him inside, you just want him shooting gaps right off the line. That's the kind of style you want him to play with, where he comes with that crazy aggressive energy. He's not tired. Oh my goodness, he can get really low and explode. I mean, he starts to lift up a little bit through games, but it was nothing that was serious. You see that with a lot of guys as the game kind of wears on. Not an issue of strength, it's more of an issue of technique for constantly disengaging from tight ends and things like that. Because sometimes you will see him, you know, walled up a little bit more than you would like, and you see him drove a little bit. To me, it's more of a technique thing, putting himself in a good position to actually make the play than anything. You don't want to ask him like two gap. I've seen him one time get double teamed and get blown off the play. That's not where you want him. You want him splitting and shooting downhill. He's not the kind of player you want taking his first step back, trying to get this wide base and hold up. Like, that's just not how he is. It's not how he's built. I do feel like there is a little bit of stiffness in the lower body, which also can kind of lead to issues setting the edge as well. And I think you see it maybe a little bit by the 3-cone drill. And I think you see it as a pass rusher, so that is something to keep note of. I think he is a little stiff there, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into this pass rushing side of things. But Kayvon, as a pass rusher, I think there's a lot of potential that is here. You know, you talk about how many moves does the guy have as a pass rusher. This guy has a ton of moves. You just don't see it all the time. We're going to talk about that in a second. But, I mean, he can bring it really all to the table, from a spin to a half spin. I don't see many guys do that, to a half spin. I've seen that a few times. I mean, to the rip through, which is usually his go-to, you know, kind of the speed rip through. You're also going to see swim moves. The guy's ability to really stop and start, kind of sink himself in a sitting down, changing direction, setting up offensive tackles that way. He could throw a boatload of passing rush moves at you. It's just, as everybody says, pass rushing plan, that is an area where he can get better. And I want to show you an example of what I think that is for Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, like I said, I do feel like he's a little stiff in the lower body, which I think shows up sometimes trying to set up a counter inside, rush towards the inside. I also think, when you get him off the edge, some of the lower body, like ankle flexion or 90-degree himself and kind of turn his feet and work his way into the quarterback and really kind of close off the pocket. That way he's not ran out of the play. It's okay, but to me, it's not great. There are times where he doesn't always show kind of that flexion to be able to turn himself and get into the quarterback. And you also see a lot of the upper body flexibility, however, with some of the shoulder dips that he have, which are just pretty. And when he wins like that, oh, those things are sweet to watch. Let's talk a little bit about it. What do we mean by pass rush plan? Everyone doesn't have a great pass rush plan. What does that mean? Well, to me, it's not that he doesn't have a lot of pass rush moves in his arsenal, or a lot of things that he can throw at you. Pass rush plan is exactly what it sounds like. Having a great plan, knowing exactly what the plan is as a pass rusher based on what you're being thrown at. See, for him, he was throwing a lot of help his direction. Sometimes teams would put tight ends in line to force him to work a little bit further outside. It would give his offensive tackle a little bit more time to get set and get more depth. Sometimes they would have a tight end kind of line up at the slot and then check him to kind of force him back inside. Sometimes they line up two tight ends on his side. I mean, there was a lot of different things that were thrown at him. Sometimes teams would put running backs in the backfield and have those guys kind of check the side of him to force him again back inside so he can't win with that speed on the edge, which everybody knows that he has a very quick first step. So every team is aware of that. Teams throw a lot of different looks at him defensively, which as a great pass rusher, you're going to have to come to expect. And at the same time, you want to still know how to be productive. You don't want a team to be able to just put a tight end on your side and not be productive anymore, because that's not extremely helpful. This one, he's going to kind of go to a bull rush. Now, the offensive tackle is going to have a tight end on his side, so he has a little bit longer to get set. He's going to play very low. He's going to have really nice leverage on this play. And we talk all the time about Kayvon Thibodeaux's first step as a pass rusher, trying to negate that a little bit here offensively. And when you have that great first step, you want that first step to really kind of attack that foot. You want to attack that, outside ankle of an offensive tackle, really trying to open them up. You really want to open those guys up. If you can win directly around the edge, win around the edge. I think this is a good example because you have this tight end in line and you see it kind of changes how he's going to pass rush here. Instead of trying to, win the edge or really put pressure on that outside shoulder of the offensive tackle, instead he kind of very quickly gets into this bull rush. And for him, it doesn't work out as the offensive tackle is already very low. He's already winning the leverage, anchored very well. And for Kayvon at this point, his hands are going to get high. He's not going to get much push. The pass rush plan just isn't great here. I think here he could have been better off really pushing that outside foot more, trying to open up the tackle, because as soon as you open up the tackle, then you can transition that into a bull rush much smoother. We know he's got the power, because when he's done it, there's been games he's done it, like Oregon State. He gets them to start to turn and open themselves up, transitions that to a long arm bull rush, and he can just run him over, completely run the guy over. That's an area where I feel like you talk about pass rush plan, just kind of cleaning that up, improving that, because man, he shows a lot of ability. Noticeable difference when Kayvon is out there on the field for an obvious passing down versus being out there on an early down, which could be a run or a pass. When you see him on those early downs, it seems a little bit less aggressive in terms of trying to hit the corner, get to the edge on an offensive tackle. Sometimes it's a little bit more under control, a little bit more bull rush. That way he's there if it's a run play. When it's obvious passing downs, he becomes extremely productive and extremely scary for offensive lines. One thing I would say is I still would like to see more development in terms of inside pass rush moves. This is an area where Aiden Hutchinson makes a ton of money, is the ability to win on the inside. And because of Kayvon Thibodeaux's stop and start, while I do think he is a little stiff, I think he could win much more from the inside than he does, or at least get more pressure. I guess one way I would put it is I don't think he's a very instinctive, maybe reactionary pass rusher, where he doesn't always play off of what the offensive tackle is giving him. Sometimes it almost seems like he has the plan, even though the plan could be much better when he attacks. Here he is on the right side. This is where Aiden Hutchinson makes his money, winning on these inside pass rush moves, and I just don't see enough winning here from Kayvon. I do think he's a little stiff, so it could leave him a little limited, but even here, like the clip we showed earlier, right, really selling that outside, that you're going to go win off the edge. That way you can counter back inside. For him, it doesn't seem like a maybe reactionary type of counter. It's almost like the decision was already made. That's where he's going, because to me, the tackle's not really oversetting on this play. He's not leaving himself wide open. You didn't really attack his ankle to really set this up that well. It's not that open, but yet he comes inside on this play and there's nothing there. So when you see instinctive, reactionary, these are things that can be cleaned up by hopefully with great coaching. You could see much more production if you clean up some of that pass rush plan within his game. Now, you will see that sometimes he'll just beat guys completely off the edge. He has that great first step, and he can just beat them off the edge, especially if there is no help to that side. If no one's forcing him back inside, if there is no tight end to give them some depth, if there's none of that, he just has a free run off the edge, especially if you know it's a passing down, because every time it was a pass down, I watched an Oregon game, the announcers would be like, okay, this is Kayvon Thibodeau's time. There were some rests where he would just completely run by an offensive tackle, where he'd get that step and he would beat the offensive tackle into the backfield. Because of that threat that he brings to the table. And by the way, you'll see guys just jump false starts. Now, there was, what game was this? I think it was Stanford. Oh my goodness, they fell apart. They had like 5 or 6 false starts in the second half, over and over and over. And that wasn't all just Kayvon, but they were in a passing kind of situation, and the defensive line knew that. And man, the amount of false starts that they had. But one of them was due to Kayvon. They put him in over a guard, and that guard jumps immediately, the right guard, knowing how fast and how quickly he can get off. And actually, one thing you notice with Oregon as well with Kayvon, sometimes they would push him inside, specifically on those pass downs, not really run downs, but on pass downs, because pushing him inside kept away some of that outside help. You know, so when he's at tackle and they put a tight end or a running back or someone on his side to kind of slow him down or take away the edge, so they would slide him inside because now he can win with that first step quickness. It wasn't always effective, but it kind of kept the help off of him from the outside. At the same time, he'll kind of repay that because he does have offsides penalties. I counted 3 of them, offside penalties where he jumps. One of them, I don't know if it was even offsides, but he will jump. You know, he gets a little trigger happy there, especially when he gets rolling to make a play in the backfield. I actually have no issues with occasional offsides here if you're making plays like he is, especially once you get rolling. Now, it's an issue when it's on crucial downs, when it's 3rd and 3 and you jump off sides. That's a problem. I didn't see that, but he can have a couple of offsides here and there. But yeah, he can win with that first step off the edge. But what I like is the ability to potentially counter that because of his stop and start. It's something that I noted with Trayvon, but man, I think Kayvon does it to a really high level. And I think this is the kind of nuance that you see with some really nice pass rushers that he's probably just developed through the years. You'll see him show his hands. He'll kind of show a strike to an offensive tackle, and an offensive tackle will immediately put their hands out. They'll kind of respond. They'll retaliate, right? If they're doing that and he can kind of get that offensive lineman to shoot their hands, then all of a sudden it's pretty much game over. Because usually what I've seen is when tackles shoot their hands, all of a sudden their feet start to slow down. They don't completely stop always, but they start to slow down. They get a little bit tighter, and then all of a sudden he can work the edge. And I think he sets that up by the stop and start that he has on the outside. He's able to kind of sink his body and stop and then go. And he can do that to the outside, to the inside, inside, outside. He has that ability to kind of sink, show his hands, and then go. And then all of a sudden he has those moves to finish the play. A lot of times his go-to is kind of a speed rip through or a bull rush transitioning into a rip through. A lot of things stemmed off his bull rush. And then you would also see some, two-handed swipe chops. If he's able to set him up with his feet, he'll go to the two-handed swipe and he'll work his way around the edge. A lot of times it was the rip through. You even saw the occasional swim move, setting up an offensive tackle where he kind of swim right over top. That ability gives you some wow plays from the edge position because you're just like, dang, I didn't know he could do all that. Those kind of plays are so impressive because it kind of tells you how much that he could actually bring to the table as a pass rusher. You can improve in terms of having counters. I think, again, that comes back to pass rush plan. Really good pass rushers, they're able to kind of set up counter moves off of their initial pass rush move, where if it's not successful, they have a setup off of that. Kayvon doesn't always seem to have that. It's kind of a counter off of that initial move where, however he's initially attacking, it's sometimes because your initial pass rush plan wasn't good. If your initial pass rush plan isn't good, then how are you going to counter off of that? But even off that plan, even if there is that plan, there isn't always a good counter off to continue to work to actively come back into the play, where at that point, if that first plan doesn't work, a lot of times it's just him, kind of jostling with his hands and trying to find a quarterback and run him down. Aside from that, it really isn't that transition of second move. But you see it all there. When you see a spin move, it's usually not a counter move for him. It's his go-to move, right? He doesn't spin counter off of pass rush, which he could do. I've seen it maybe once, but it's usually not a counter. It's his initial move that he rolls to. He's got a lot of ability here. It just needs to be cleaned up because there's not always that second move that he has, that second strike to throw at you where the first one didn't work. Now what can I come back with? And I think in the NFL, you need that because there's a lot of good tackles. You have to find a way to win with that second attack. And a better initial pass rush plan consistently will help you improve in that area. When you talk about the pass rush plan and maybe the lack of ability to string some counter pass rush moves together, to me, I don't look at it as, well, he can't do these certain pass rush moves. He can't counter counter this way. I think he's a really nice athlete. He's got a good enough length. There's enough flexibility, especially in the upper body. So it's not to the point where it's like, well, I don't think he can do these things, because I definitely think he can. But to me, it almost comes down to having that confidence instilled to just go do it without thinking about it. You know, when you put in time for something over and over and over, you're not even thinking about it in the moment. You pass rush, the tackle gives you this look, and instinctively you shift and you go to something else, right? You instinctively transition. I think that's something that I think Charles actually had a knock on that coming out of the draft. I'm pretty sure that was one of his knocks coming out of the draft, and we saw what he did last season. So I would hope with great coaching, you know, you come in, you get a really nice defensive line coach like a Todd Wash, where when Josh Allen came out, they were like, yeah, he's a little raw. I would hope with that good coaching and just that repetition and having that instilled in your head where you're not even thinking about it. You know, that's just doing something over and over and over with someone that's teaching you the right way to do it, to the point where you don't even think that as soon as the tackle did this, I do this, rather than coming in and kind of deciding this is what I'm going to, where you see all the ability, and when it works out well, it is incredible. If it is closed off, you don't always see that instinctiveness to be like, oh, go to this. It just kind of stops, right? It just kind of stops in its tracks. So I think the ability is there, but when you talk about, you know, raw as a pass rusher, I think that's what I think about. You know, if you're a basketball player and you shoot 100 free throws every single day for 2 years or something, all of a sudden you go out there and shoot a free throw, you don't even think about it. You stop thinking about how I'm shooting the ball during the game. You know, it always comes off the same. It always feels that you don't even think about feeling the shot. And I'm not going to talk about the off the field stuff. That's something that the Lions are going to have to figure out by talking to people around him, things like that. When it comes to on the field effort, you know, that is, it's something that I think shows up a little bit. You know, there are some plays, specifically when maybe he takes the wrong read. I felt like against UCLA where he was jogging a little bit, as Brad would say, loafing a little bit. No, he was coming back off his ankle injury, which left him a little bit rotational. Apparently he wanted to play against Stony Brook and just play third downs, but unfortunately they did not clear him to play in that game. Oregon State game, man, that dude was on a mission, it felt like. And we know about his ability to drop into coverage. Like we talk about Trayvon, he dropped into coverage 20 times. I think you talk about Trayvon because of the role that he plays and, you know, how big he is. But with Kayvon, he dropped into coverage a lot as well. Kayvon probably dropped into coverage more than Trayvon Walker, if I'm being honest. And Kayvon was given some man coverage assignments. Now, those didn't go that well. I don't think that's the best fit for him because, again, the lower body is kind of stiff. So that change direction to react to guys isn't great. It's kind of choppy. But just having him drop into his zone, sometimes he could take spots away. He can do that. Now, I think he actually could improve a little bit here in terms of giving it away. Sometimes you'll just see by how he aligns, you know what he's doing pre-snap. It's like maybe you could sell a little more, maybe get a little closer to the line here. That way they don't know that you're dropping into coverage. Sometimes he completely gives it away. He dropped into coverage a lot. And I just thought in that Oregon State game, man, he was playing with a different mentality. He got rolling and he just kept it going. Like this play of just throwing the running back on the ground. Yeah, he got a flag for it, but I'm not going to be mad about that. You know, he also got a flag for targeting. That kicked him out of the Stanford game, and they ended up losing that game. If you look at that last drive, you see Stanford went down to score at the end. He went out when they were about at their own 30-yard line. And there was a big impact. They were struggling. All of a sudden, he goes out. They go down to score a touchdown, and they end up actually winning in overtime. He got ejected in that game for a very weak target. Like, it wasn't a weak targeting call because it was helmet to helmet, but as a pass rusher, it's really tough because the situation that he was in, it's like, what else is he supposed to do here? We know how those calls go. Personally, I want my edge rushers, I want my defensive linemen to be mean. You know, not necessarily off the field. On the field, though, I want him to play with that kind of just that energy. And something about this Oregon State game, maybe the rivalry of it, these two clips that I sent Rad, I was just like, whoa. And yeah, he did get a flag for one of these. He did get a flag for throwing a guy on the ground because I guess he can't do that. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I can handle a play like that here and there, you know? Now, crucial situations, all right, it's fourth quarter, we got to get the ball back. Don't do something dumb like this. But in this game, the atmosphere, I mean, come on, man. Like, how could I be mad at this? First off, throwing this guy on the ground. And then this one shows the ability to drop in coverage, of course, which he has, and then comes up and just smacks the quarterback on this play. But I thought the impact was great. And I thought really as the game went on, when he got to those fourth quarter obvious pass down situations, he just pinned his ears back. That's when he became a really big problem because he just played with a different motor as a pass rusher when that's the case. There's a ton of upside here. I mean, he is an outstanding pass rusher, and I don't think the numbers do it justice. So again, I think there's things that need improvement. Could the Lions be interested? Yes, absolutely, right? If they feel like off the field checks out and they're good with this guy, which, you know, again, we don't really know, I wouldn't be shocked the Lions took him because he is an outstanding pass rusher that with some things cleaned up. And look, we've seen guys come out a little bit raw. Josh Allen, a little bit raw. Todd Wash, 10 sacks his first year. You saw Yannick come out a little bit raw. He turned into a stud. Todd Wash was his defensive line coach. And to me, Kayvon, it's not like he's maybe as raw as Trayvon because Trayvon played a completely different role. Kayvon's not completely raw. There's things that he can do. It's just he could also be improved here so that he always has a pass rush plan and that he always has a counter strung off of it. I think he is a fun player to watch. So this is kind of some of my thoughts on Kayvon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Stay tuned, doseofdn.com. I'm going to be dropping my draft guide on there soon, so you guys check that out. And I'm out.